neuroendocrine cells that exist in the synapse, which means a bridge that connect your gut to your brain. Let's do that first and foremost. So we see the connection between the gut and the brain. The gut is actually your brain itself. The brain is actually the interpreter that gets too much credit. Okay, the brain speaks the language of all the different cells of the body, the heart cells, the brain cells, and everything like that, and then it interprets what's needed, so long as the neurotransmission is not compromised, and you need oxygen for that. So when we tell you don't take all those antibacterial soaps and don't take all those antibiotics, and because you're going to eliminate the good bacteria that exists in your gut, and now somehow iron has something to do with it. Hepcidin, they just found out about this about 30 years ago. In the 1990s, they just found out about Hepcidin. Prior to that, and still today, ignorantly, you still got doctors that say, hey, if you got low iron levels, take 3 sets of iron pills every damn day. And the more iron pills you take, the more Hepcidin levels you raise, the more your Hepcidin levels raise, the less iron can be absorbed. When Hepcidin goes up, iron absorption goes down. Then you have this phenomenon called anemia. Not sickle cell anemia, anemia. And anemia is actually being imposed on black people secretly because it can be rectified. Number one, stop making people take iron pills. Like iron is a mineral similar to all those other minerals. It's very different, and you need the cofactor D3 for the iron. I didn't say D2, but you need to first know D2 and D3. D2 comes from plants and D3 comes from animals. But when we say it comes from animals, we mean from sun exposure. Sun has to be a part of your diet. Facts, when you go to work, it's dark, and when you go off a lunch break, you probably work downtown with the skyscraper scraping the sky, blocking the sun. You don't get enough sun. Then when you get off of work, there's no sunlight. Then when you do hang out, it's nighttime, and you only get in the moon's light, which is a luminescent body, not of itself, but gets its light from the sun. You become a lunatic. That's another conversation for another time. We got to get into this because Hepcidin is made from the liver. Whoa. Hepcidin is made from the liver. So, let's go to the next slide. This was the abbreviated version because I was doing the Instagram thing that has to be less than 10 minutes. Okay, people. BBC News updated map. We cannot fly to Europe no more, but we still can fly to Africa. Very interesting to me. Very, very, very interesting. Because someone's always more of a target than others, but they've been keeping these people who are targets very anonymous lately. Unless they're a superstar now, because Tom Hanks got it. Okay? And Rudy Gobert got it. These are all white folks, not black folks. And so it gets interesting because when you look throughout Africa, you got Algeria here, you got Egypt here, you got Nigeria there, Cameroon there, we got the Congo here, we got South Africa there. And it's very mild. Okay? We get a little bit more where it escalates here in Algeria and in Egypt, but the reality is these happen to also be the countries that China has its biggest hand in. They actually have larger Chinese populace there. The point in case is for Africa to be so filled with destitution, pestilence, and be behind the medical industry, most of the damn continent isn't even impacted. But you look over here in America, and you definitely look over here at China. And they got the whole of Europe over here. You look at Africa and you go, God damn, most of Africa isn't even impacted. And then when you consider the parts of Africa that's impacted, China's been trying to purchase Africa for some time now. They got their hands thick into those countries that I just labeled. Coincidence? No coincidence. Now I have to take you on another journey. So, the way this journey works is that we gotta know that, which one should I do? White people have larger red blood cells. Black people have smaller red blood cells. White people have more hemoglobin. Black people have less hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the protein that's responsible for the uptake of oxygen so it can be distributed throughout the body. If you subject to technology that constitutes 60 megahertz, it compromises the spin frequency of the covalent bond that we know as oxygen in its molecular form. And what that in turn does is make it hard for our body to make rationale out of how to use the oxygen. I know you're like, what does all this have to do with coronavirus? Close that for me? Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm calling coronavirus a misnomer for 60 megahertz technology. That's what I'm doing. And it gets deeper than this, but first, it's so much layers of information that we got to go through. So let's do it, and let's do it real good. Let me check something out. Good? Okay. Let's check this out. Okay, so let me start again. White people have larger red blood cells and more hemoglobin. Black people have smaller red blood cells and lesser hemoglobin. It is actually easier for white people to get vitamin D3. Let's stop saying vitamin D, just like there's a B complex. There's technically a D complex. There's vitamin D2 and D3. D2 you get from plants, going to help you absorb magnesium, which the magnesium is then going to help you absorb what? Calcium. Calcium is L-ascorbic acid, which has been proven in the cases of bacterial and viral infections. It lowers the duration of the impact of those viruses and most instances eliminates the bacterial infection or the viral infection. See, there's a lot of information that we got to cover because it's not common. We don't get taught this in school, and we only start considering these things when we feel our life is at stake. And like I said, people doing weird things like destroying all the good bacteria in their house because they don't want to get coronavirus. Where in turn, they're now lowering their immunity by doing so because now your gut doesn't have much to gain from that kind of activity. But we go again. White people have white people have more hemoglobin and they have more red blood cells. They have larger red blood cells. Black people have lesser red blood cells, smaller red blood cells, and they have less hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein responsible for the uptake of oxygen so it can be distributed throughout the body. Now that we got that resolved, we got to go over to vitamin D3. It's easier for white people to access vitamin D3 in a lesser period of time. The problem is they can't get as much as they would like because the sun will burn them, but they get it quicker than us. Our body protects us from the harmful aspects of the sun, so it takes us a longer period of time to synthesize the vitamin D3 that we get, so we have to stay in the sun for longer periods of time. The reason why you can see this kind of opposing thing going on is because one is compensatory. So this means because white people can't stay in the sun longer, their body is conditioned in such a way to be able to take more in a little bit of time, where our body was designed to be on planet Earth. So there's no rush. So we have smaller red blood cells and a lower hemoglobin count because we can stay in the sun long enough to avoid a lot of the plagues that don't demand as much as oxygen for the body, because oxygen is a resourceful tool that is also poisonous. That's why you have antioxidants, just like glucose is poisonous. Yes, glucose is poisonous, so what happens? We got to do this. And I'm going to come right back, and we're going to get to coronavirus and to the different races and see how everybody's being impacted. Well, adipose is a fat. Let's remember that. I don't want to have to keep saying adipose. People get distracted So just think fat when I said adipose. Okay, so now what we got to understand is the liver and the pancreas got to constantly communicate. Blood sugar is called glucose. Glucose in the bloodstream is toxic unless it's used specifically for what it needs to be used for. It is toxic. It's like leaving the guns around the children in the household. Eventually something bad is going to happen. If the glucose stays suspended, is the battery still down? If the glucose stays suspended, I'm just talking to the guys. If it stays suspended in the bloodstream, the nerves get destroyed in the body. And this is why people lose their sense of feeling when they're diabetic. You walking with me? So now what happens is your body says we got to regulate the amount of blood sugar that comes in and out and be able to call on it or summons it when we need it. So hormones are instructions. So your liver gives instructions in the form of the hormone glucagon that attaches itself to receptors that's in the liver, so those cells can now say, take the excess amount of glucose and store it inside a fat called glycogen. Well, pardon me. The glucagons give instructions when it attaches itself to the liver receptors of the cell and then say, hey, we need more glucose so it can be distributed through. Glycogen is the blood sugar that's stored inside a fat to protect you from the toxicity of the blood sugar. So let's do it again. The liver, let's do it again, pardon me. The pancreas has a hormone called glucagon that it sends to the liver to tell the liver it's okay to give us more blood sugar. The liver stores the blood sugar inside a fat called glycogen. When the glucagons attach itself to receptors that come from the liver, executed by the pancreas, the liver will then say, okay, let's release these into the bloodstream. The insulin now comes in from the pancreas and says, well, cells get ready to open up your walls to allow the blood sugar that's now being distributed, thanks to the homies called the glucagons that came from the pancreas, conveyed the message to the liver to access the glycogen, which is the fat that stores the blood sugar as a reserve, because we know the blood sugar is toxic. Now that everybody has made it clear we need more blood sugar, release the glycogen, release the insulin, release the blood sugar that's inside of the glycogen. The insulin now is produced and gives the instructions, because insulin is a hormone. It gives the instructions for the cells to open up their walls, allow the blood sugar to go in so it can be metabolized. That's what's going on. Okay? So pancreas communicates to liver. Liver distributes blood sugar in the stream. Pancreas says, hey, insulin, do your job. Insulin gives instructions, give it to us in the cells. Why is all of this even important in the first place? So now we got to go into what's called sickle cell anemia, which is an adaptive disorder. Sickle cell anemia was black people's cure. Now we can get into the real stuff. The cure for sickle cell anemia was what? The ability for black people to take something like a parasite called malaria that they wasn't familiarized with in Africa, but on account of different climatical conditions, you don't catch a hot in Africa, you catch a cold in America. So we caught these colds, everyone was dropping like flies, but black people managed to stay alive.
I heard about this school online. Maybe I should check